Hey, you kids, get off my lawn. Unless you're mowing it, let's see your mobile phone for initiative. Do as I say. What's up, a frowny face? Go out and play. Just like your parents did. Just like your parents did. As if your parents did.
Hello and welcome to First Gen Gamers. I am co-host solo this time, Jed, obviously, unless Ashley's voice is dropped. Ashley is not with us today, but I have a special guest here today. He is a principal game designer. He works with Behavior Interactive, and he's been in the business for over 15 years. Huge fan of gaming, obviously, loves gaming nostalgia, has a bit of a mild obsession, as he put it, with golf games. Please welcome Jamie Smith.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. Yeah, nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you as well. So I should say, before we get into the topic at hand, want to get to know you and the listeners get to know you as well. So how did you get into the games development side of the business?
Yeah. So more on the industry side. So I studied at university. I'm from the northeast of the UK, and the northeast is almost like a mini Silicon Valley. And the university that is in that area was predominantly around kind of future tech at the time, creative visualization, game design. So it was a bunch of courses in that kind of realm. And towards the end of my time at university studying, that kind of field, there was almost like a Dragon's Den kind of event came up. If you think of it like The Apprentice or something like that, there is a competition. They're trying to whittle it down to one person who gets an internship. And I got my first internship working at Ubisoft, which was in Newcastle. That is also based in the Northeast, roughly 40 miles from where I am. And then here I am now, 15 years later. I've worked at a whole bunch of different studios, but effectively I got my first start through a competition that was trying to root out kind of, great talent or, design talent in the Northeast.
So you mentioned in your bio that you work for Behavior Interactive, which is most famous probably to gamers for the asymmetrical multiplayer game Dead by Daylight.
Yeah.
Do you work on that, or do you work on other projects for Behavior?
Yes, I'm currently working on a project that I don't think I can talk too much about, but I do work with many people who are based on Dead by Daylight, and it's one of the perks of the job. Obviously, it's up to, it's probably more than a 10-year anniversary at this point, or coming up to that kind of point. One of the first perks of the job you come in is you get all of the downloadable content free for,
nice.
For Dead by Daylight. So yeah, I've not worked on the game, but I'm, reaping the benefits of what the other hard workers are kind of putting forwards to that.
Could you tell me any games that we might know that you've worked on in the past?
Yeah. So I've been at many different studios, but they're probably the highest profile ones. Tom Clancy's The Division. I worked on that whilst I was at Ubisoft. I designed the loot system for that game. So I was effectively the architect of the reward system in that. So a pretty big game. Obviously, that was that time when Borderlands, was probably just coming to fruition. Destiny was just coming to fruition to kind of loot the shooters. And then more recently, I was helping out with Activision on Call of Duty Vanguard. So at this point, it was probably 3 or 4 iterations ago, but I was responsible for the weaponry and the player side of things on the single player campaign.
Wow. So these are notable games. This is, no shade to the indie scene at all. The indie scene's wonderful, but I mean, there's a wealth of difference of being able to say I worked on The Last Campfire versus I worked on Call of Duty.
Yeah. It's a big breadth of stuff as well. Again, I've worked with many studios that have had smaller teams, indie devs kind of spin out from bigger teams and things. But the best thing for me personally in the time I've been in games is meeting people or heroes that have worked on games that I admired. The Call of Duty team, for example, was what was Visceral Games, and the Visceral Games team worked on Dead Space, and I was a huge Dead Space fan. So luckily for me, I got to work with some of the Dead Space devs on Call of Duty, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that must have been, very cool.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we get into the topic at hand today? This was a topic that was suggested by you, as a matter of fact. Today's topic is underrated games, which the word underrated has kind of become a little, it's kind of become tricky to use anymore. I almost feel, because anyone who has a game that they seem to love that isn't a 10 out of 10 people call underrated. So I think there's like, you kind of have to really rescale what underrated is at this point. But speaking for myself, I think I've picked a good round of games that are off the beaten path. And I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll find out, from both of these and kind of doing it off the cuff. But one thing I did have, I wrote down a small definition for myself as to what I was considering an underrated game, if that's kind of any use, because people, like you said, it could be a loaded term, or unless it's on the front of, magazine kind of covers, it might not be. But I just wrote a few things here, which is it's the type of game you'd find in a bargain bucket. It's not particularly well hyped, is typically overlooked, or may have flown under the radar. In the olden times, I'm talking kind of 10 or 15 years ago, it's the type of game you'd rent from Blockbuster on a weekend and have change left over for a pizza. And in the modern times, it's the type of things I think that comes with the Humble Bundle, but it's not the star of the show of the Humble Bundle. And for me, it's kind of the quintessential 7 out of 10 experience, which is greater than the sum of its parts.
I think that was a beautiful way to put it. Absolutely beautiful. So with that said, let's kick it off. Starting with the second generation, the Ataris, the first two Ataris, the ColecoVision, the Intellivision. What is your pick for the underrated game for that generation?
Yeah, so this was slightly before my generation, but I had discovered this kind of since. So this is from the Atari 2600, or at least that's where I played it on. And this is Beam Rider. And Beam Rider come from Activision. And it's effectively a variation of Tempest from Atari. So it's Activision's kind of variation on that. You move from left to the right at the bottom of the screen. It's a rail shooter, so you're shooting into the distance. It's a pseudo 3D playfield, despite the fact it's kind of limited tech. But also it's kind of got this variation on Space Invaders, so the enemies are coming towards you. In Tempest, they switch lanes. In this game, it's more like Galaxian. The enemies are kind of flying in crazy patterns kind of towards you. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
You just scratched an itch for me. Mentioning and comparing anything to Tempest, like I adore Tempest. So I think I missed out on this game back in the day. I was really young, like when 1980 rolled around, I was 3. So, we didn't have gaming magazines back then, but I'm going to have to look this one up because that one sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, so because it's funny you mentioned Tempest, because I was a late comer to it. Obviously, it's more in the modern generation, but I'm a big fan of TXK and Tempest 4000. And this is almost like a variation on the very original Tempest. But yeah, if you like that kind of thing or any kind of rail shooters, definitely check this out.
I will. I absolutely will. My pick for that generation is from... I could have picked an entire console and just said the Atari 5200 and left that. That was my console for that. Well, I had two. I had the Intellivision and I had the Atari 5200. And most people who don't have an Atari 5200 look down on it. And it had some really solid games on it. It just, that controller was a real pain to deal with. But there was a game on there that I really loved called Pengo.
Nice.
It was a puzzle game of sorts where you play as this penguin and the field is like an iceberg, like a flat iceberg. And the whole idea is that there are enemies that are coming in different directions. It's laid out as a grid and you are trying to skate across it and then encircle them to defeat them while cutting out the ice, but the ice falls away. So you kind of have to pay attention to where you're going because you might end up cornering yourself with no floor.
Yeah. It's like, in that case, it's almost like a dynamic difficulty is that you as a player don't understand the depth until you realize you've just cut away half the arena.
Yes.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know that it has been re-released anywhere, and emulating the 5200, I mean, it's not like it's a technological leap like, say, the Saturn is. Emulating that's a pain in the rear end, but emulating the 5200 takes a lot of techno steps that your average person might not have the patience to deal with. So
yeah,
if you're interested, good luck finding it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another one back to the underrated gems part of it, is that there's another element, which is trying to unearth a game that you can no longer get a hold of. It's landlocked to a certain system or a certain era. And, even if the emulation side of it isn't great, it's an underrated gem, just our definition of not many people will be able to find it in that sense.
Yeah. All right. Next generation, the third generation of consoles, the Nintendo Entertainment System, the Sega Master System, the Atari 7800. What is your pick?
Yeah, big one for me. So the Sega Master System was the first console I ever owned that had the curved box version, which was the second kind of model. It had Alex Kidd built into it. But one of my favorite games, I'll start by saying it has one of the worst video game box arts ever. and it's a game called Black Belt. It's a side-on fighting game. If you think of it like a Streets of Rage or Double Dragon, that kind of side of it. But instead of being able to move into the background, it's just purely from left to right. Very similar to Karateka. Parallax scrolling in the background. You play as a martial artist. You wander across the screen and just attack enemies. You can punch, you can kick, you can do a jumping kick. The cool thing about it is that they effectively have 3 types of fights in the game. One of the fights is your typical grunts. You just kick them once or twice and they kind of blow away. The next one is it's a mini boss. You get locked to a screen so you can no longer traverse until you overcome the boss. And each of those characters has a special move or some kind of way to defeat them. And the third one is the most interesting one, which is it puts you in an arena like Street Fighter. The sprites are blown up to be much bigger on the screen, and you're effectively fighting a very difficult enemy with a super cool kind of finishing sequence where every hit that you land, it gets faster and faster as the enemy kind of reduces their health. It's a pretty cool game. It's relatively unknown, as I say, to Black Belt, but it's most people have probably seen the box art more than they've seen the game itself.
I can think of the box art right now. And
the foot.
The foot is on the grid paper.
Yeah.
The Master System did not have the best artwork. But I love the Master System. It is definitely an underappreciated console. It has a lot of unique gems on it that I don't understand why Sega forgets that they have consoles outside of the 16-bit generation.
Yeah.
Like they have released the Genesis / Mega Drive library so many times, and the Master System is one of them. Like the only games that I can think of that ever get re-released on their Phantasy Star, maybe
Wonder Boy.
Yeah, Wonder Boy.
Yeah.
Maybe Fantasy Zone. That's about it.
Yeah. And it's a shame as well, because when you talk about something like Sonic 2, what people always refer to is the 16-bit version, whereas the 8-bit version is a completely different game altogether and also has its own interesting kind of quirks as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is definitely an underappreciated console with a lot of great games for someone who wants to find them.
Yeah. Is yours from the Master System as well then?
I wish it was. Unfortunately, it isn't. I haven't played enough of the Master System. What I've played of it, I've loved. But I haven't found that hidden gem on there yet that I can latch on to. But mine is from the Nintendo, and it is Clash at Demon Head.
I've not heard of that. That's cool.
This is an action adventure platformer, so it is side scrolling. And what makes it really interesting, I want to say there's about 45 different levels to it, but there are multiple branching paths. It takes the branching path idea of Castlevania 3, but blows it up so that the map, all the spots on the map for the different levels are interconnected. So you can, rather than just go in a straight line or just have 2 choices, you might have 4 different choices, and then you can backtrack to a different one, and you can make loops in go all over the map. And what that also does is, depending on the direction you come at the level on the map, is the direction you're scrolling on the screen. So if you start at like level 1 and then you turn left to go to the level that is west of there, you will be traversing from right to left on the level itself.
That's cool. Yeah.
Really takes a different frame of mind to be able to play a side-scrolling platformer and do it in the opposite direction of everything that you're used to. There's shops for upgrading weapons and armor, and so there's almost an RPG-like element with a minor economy in there. Very forgotten. Like, the people who know about it love it. It's just it just has that really small audience that can't stop shouting about it enough, but can't get people to listen.
Yeah, exactly. And it goes back to that definition again, which is, there's a game I'm going to mention later on, which is in a similar kind of mold, which is, it's been kind of like overshadowed by bigger franchises, or a game that did it more successfully, or it wasn't the originator of the idea, but it was not the one that popularized the idea. But yeah, I'm a big fan. But now that you mention it, I'm going to check that up, because I've got a list of a few NES games that I've been playing kind of locally on some smaller devices that are almost like my nightcap. So I'll add that to the list.
Yeah, I've been doing that too. I've got an analog pocket, and I'm using it to check out all the games that I missed from those eras. Just started Earthbound for the first time.
Ah, nice. Yeah. A lot of people mention that. I've got the Retroid Pocket 5, and for me, it's the similar kind of thing. It's just jumping in and out of different bits and pieces. But yeah, that's how I discovered some of these, as well as, the games that I did have, or the games that I'm rediscovering, that kind of stuff.
Yep. So let's get to the next generation, the fourth generation, the 16-bit era. What do you have?
So mine is from the Mega Drive, or the Genesis. I was a big Sega kid, kind of in general. But one thing, I'm a big fan of that. But I'm a big fan of kind of Americanisms, but some of the stuff that doesn't necessarily penetrate over here. So, for example, my game is a lesser known variation of Madden, which is Mutant League Football. And I imagine probably everybody in the States has probably heard of this game, but we're in the UK, obviously we have soccer, and NHL and NBA doesn't necessarily penetrate as much. But this is a type of thing which is relatively pick up and play. You've got these crazy kind of creatures. To me, I used to be a big fan of the Mighty Ducks, and that's how I kind of look at it, is that this is the Addams Family version of NFL in that kind of sense. Simplifies the complexity. I'm a big fan of the Oakland Raiders, so my team was in there, Death Skin Raiders, and the idea that you can throw a Hail Mary and get taken out in a pool of blood is super cool.
Yes, I love Mutant League Football. It's and I love the reboot that they did. What was it, 3-4 years back, I think?
Yeah, I know which one you mean.
Yeah, it absolutely fun to just. My favorite thing to do with it is to play as the all-star team, play against the worst team in the league, crank up the violence meter to 5, and just see how long I can, how fast I would dwindle down their roster to the point where they have to give up because they don't have enough players to continue.
Yeah, they've been decimated pretty much. Yeah, it's super cool. But as I say, I suppose it's probably more well known in the States than it kind of is in the UK. But I'm a big fan of those NHL 3-on-3, NBA Jam, NFL Street, anything that basically simplifies the rule set and pick up and play. But just like you said there, the fact that you can also modify things, you can use the best players in the game, and, winning by decimation is just as valid as throwing the perfect Hail Mary, which is pretty cool as well, because it means you don't have to stick to the classic rules.
Yeah. I would say it probably is more familiar here than it is over there, but it still doesn't have the level of popularity because football fans tend to be a little bit purist.
Yeah,
the people over here who stick to Madden and run franchise mode and dynasty mode and everything, they would look at Mutant League Football as a perversion of the sport.
Yeah.
So I don't take it that seriously. I like football. I'm wearing a football t-shirt right now, but I enjoy Mutant League Football. Wonderfully stupid game that you could just plop it. Like you said, you could drop right in, play a game, drop right out.
Yeah, especially the way they simplify the plays and stuff. But I imagine this is the time that you say yours is Mutant League Hockey.
No, it's not. I liked Mutant League Hockey. I didn't get into it as much as Mutant League Football just because I'm more of a football guy. But my game is from the Genesis / Mega Drive. It's Phantasy Star 3 Generations of Doom.
Nice.
I think this one gets overshadowed because, one, it's the middle child between the excellent 2 and the almost iconic 4, but also because of its gimmick. Whereas Phantasy Star 2 and 4 and the original Phantasy Star on the Master System were all straightforward RPGs with a fantasy futuristic setting. 3 takes this weird idea of having at the end of the there's 3 quest levels, I guess you could call them, or 3 storylines. At the end of the first storyline, your main character is given the choice of which girl he wants to marry. And from there, your kid, whichever girl you pick, your child becomes the protagonist of the next story. And so then you go through that, and then that child has their pick of a romantic interest, and the child from that becomes the protagonist of the third level of the story. So it's really like smaller sized RPGs that are chunked off into these generations. And it just didn't get the love at the time that 2 did or 4 did, because I think people were so focused on the game not feeling like one cohesive story, but three much smaller RPGs. But I liked that. I liked the idea of having these multiple branching paths and seeing different outcomes, and they all lead to the same final boss, but it's different paths to get there. And I think people just slept on it.
Yeah, and well, even just as you're describing it there, that's very similar to Rogue Legacy, Crusader Kings. I imagine, was there an element of the stats kind of carry over, or there's some change in the kind of the child as well?
It's been a long time since I played it. The only one that I can remember where the stats carry over is there's a cyborg character that's like your helper. And so you kind of inherit him, a character, he travels with character A, and then the character is inherited with character B, and then again with C. I think if I remember correctly, the different characters, the different generations do have different aspects to them based upon who you marry. You might, I'm just spitballing because I can't quite remember, but maybe your first 2 selections are like a Valkyrie warrior and a sorceress. So your child from which one you pick, is going to be kind of the inherited traits of both, not necessarily leveled up, but at least if you pick the sorceress, you've got a little more magic strength. If you pick the warrior, you're a little more focused in combat. So
yeah, that's cool. Nice, that's super good. Even then, as I said, that sounds like it's ahead of its time, because there's not many games that are doing that. We would call that almost like persistence in stats, or the progression kind of continues after permadeath, but in this case, it's kind of continues after the end of the game, or continues after a certain checkpoint, which is super cool. That's nice. That's cool pick.
Yeah. Let's move on to the next generation, the 5th generation, the beginning of 3D gaming. What is your selection?
Yeah, so this big one for me, because the N64, this is where my game's from, is probably my favorite kind of era. I love the console. And in general, I look at the N64 as almost like an embarrassment of riches when it comes to unsung games. Aside from the top tier, that could be one of 12 or so. And for me, this is Space Station Silicon Valley. And for a lot of people that haven't played this, it's effectively a platforming game where you play as a microchip. And that doesn't sound that great, but that microchip can jump into any creature in the world and inhabit their traits. So the idea being, it's an end of the world futuristic scenario. Everything has become a robot, and your microchipped robot character can basically become anybody that it kind of sees. And then each of these creatures that you take over, they're all based on animals. There'll be a dog, a sheep, a hippo, a kangaroo, and so on. There are certain objectives that you've got to complete in platformed areas that need to use the particular traits of those particular animals. But it's not like you play as a dog and you bark. The dog has rocket-powered jetpack on its back. Or you have a turtle and the turtle becomes a tank. So if you're a tank, you can blow up a wall, and that's the only way you can progress to the next area, for example. But for people that do know about the game, this is from DMA Design, who also worked on Body Harvest and worked on the GTA games before they got rebranded as Rockstar North. So this is one of the steps that they had between Lemmings and GTA, pretty much, that they did in the N64 area.
Interesting. What was the game called again?
Space Station, Silicon Valley. And I think that's one of the reasons people don't know about it, because there's probably too many syllables in the name.
Possibly a little bit of a generic name too. Like,
yeah.
You don't really get an idea of what it is from there, and definitely from the description, which the description is very fascinating. I would never have guessed that from that title.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of in more modern times, you get Dishonored, where you can take over a rat and you can kind of go around the environment. Or in Mario Odyssey, you can throw your cap and become a T-Rex. It's effectively a precursor to that mechanic. You take over a creature and then you do what the creature does. One of the other things that people know about the game as well is it's impossible to 100% complete it. You can only get 99% of the collectibles in the world because there's a bug that stops you from getting the last one.
Oh,
yeah.
That sucks.
Yeah. Locked to a cartridge that they never fixed.
Oh, unfortunate. I'm sure that has driven more than a few gamers insane trying to, and not knowing that it's physically impossible to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. So what was yours then?
So mine, I'm sticking with Sega here.
Nice.
I followed Sega into this generation onto the Saturn. God help me. I'm kidding. I loved the Saturn. It was a wonderful console. Sega just did it really dirty. And the game I'm picking is another role-playing game that, both by its design and by what console it was on, I think really got overlooked. And that was Shining the Holy Ark.
Oh, okay.
It's part of the Shining series. Shining in the Darkness was the first, but the Shining series is more famous for the Shining Force strategy RPG games. But Shining the Holy Ark was a return to this gameplay style of Shining in the Darkness, which was a first-person RPG. What makes it different? So Shining in the Darkness, which was on the Genesis Mega Drive, was all in dungeons. There was no world exploration. Everything took place in a dungeon. The only time you weren't in it was when you were in town talking to people. Shining the Holy Ark actually takes you into the world.
Yeah.
And it is a beautifully drawn world. The music is gorgeous. The combat, it's an RPG of its time. So it's your standard turn-based combat, but it's well done. The sprites are drawn very beautifully. Like I said, the world design is very attractive. Shining Force took the series in a different direction. And when Sega tried to pivot back, it really wasn't what the fans wanted. But I loved it because I preferred that to Shining Force's style. I would say go and try it, but it's on a Saturn.
Yeah. Is it one of those from the Saturn as well? Because I know when you said about the sprite work that it was almost like a dedicated chip, or the high bar of, the quality for sprite work. But did the box art look like the game? Because that was the thing before this era, is sometimes the box art would look much better than, say, the sprite work of the game. But did it kind of look in parity with the visuals on the front of the cover?
The box art, I would say I don't think the visuals were 100% to what the box art was, but in the spirit of.
Yeah.
The gulf was a lot closer than, say, the 16-bit era. It was very anime inspired, but it still looked a lot closer to the art than it ever had before.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because I always remember when people talk about Mario Brothers 3, one of my all-time favorites, they think of the cover where he's in the Tanuki suit and it's got the really high resolution kind of image, and a bit like Super Mario World, but you play in game and he's, effectively 25 pixels or something. But yeah, I think the Saturn, and, as you get into things like Third Strike, it was probably about that time where the cover art and the sprite work were, the parity was much closer to each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to the next generation, the 6th generation. Probably the most not the most crowded generation for consoles, but the one that had at least 4 heavy hitters. The Xbox, the Dreamcast, the GameCube, and of course the PlayStation 2. What is your pick for that?
Yeah, so mine is from the PlayStation 2, and it's a game called Dark Cloud, which I imagine some people have heard of, but it's the one I mentioned earlier, which is it's been overshadowed by multiple other franchises like Dragon's Quest, White Knight Chronicles, Ni no Kuni, and effectively it's a Japanese RPG, but it's got a really simple element to it, which is you play as a character in a third-person open world. You go down into a dungeon, go fight some creatures, very similar to a Final Fantasy, but it's real-time kind of combat. And not only do you fight the creatures, but you're looking for the inhabitants of the town who, on the surface of the world, the town has completely gone missing and all the townsfolk have gone missing. So when you first load up the game, what you see is a giant open world of mud and soil, and that's pretty much it. And your idea is you go into the dungeon, fight the zombies and the creatures, earn some new items and some new abilities, but also bring the inhabitants back to the surface. And that's where the second part of the game comes in, is that it's got a pseudo town building, base building element to it, which is you place the windmill back in the town, or you place the police station back in the town, and the inhabitants in the town starts to come back to life because you've saved them. And there is a third element to it, which is not only can you build your own town, very similar to, Animal Crossing or something to that effect. They also have goals, which will be, this person likes the smell of bread. Therefore, you should place the windmill next to the bakery so that the windmill blows the smells of the bread towards this person's house. So there's almost like a puzzle element to it as well. But it's a super cool game. It's got a sequel called Dark Chronicle, but Dark Cloud is from the PS2 era.
Interesting. I'm going to have to look that up, see if it's been re-released on like the PSN store.
It definitely is. Yeah, it is. It's on there.
It is. Okay, that's going on the wish list because that sounds. I remember the cover for it, and the PS2 came out. I had it, but it came out, and shortly after it came out, my life just changed. Like I moved across the country, I got engaged, I was pursuing a career. Like for about a span of about 5-6 years, I gamed, but it was more in the background.
Yeah.
And so I remember seeing Dark Cloud in game stores. I just never got around to picking it up. I'm going to have to rectify that.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's funny now, and the reason I bring it up is because it's almost like a blend of genres. And that's a really big thing on Steam for the moment. Any game, but it has a roguelike kind of element to it or something to that kind of effect. But if I put it kind of differently, it's kind of the best parts of Diablo and Final Fantasy with the best parts of, like an Animal Crossing kind of base building aspect of it. But obviously, because of its age, it's relatively rudimentary on that front. But if you haven't played it already, it's a super cool one to pick up even now. And it has trophy support on PlayStation as well, on the network.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely wish listing that.
Nice.
All right. My pick for this generation might be a little bit of a cheat for some of the things that you said, but I think it's underrated within its own franchise. How about that? And that would be Super Mario Sunshine.
Nice. That's cool.
If there is a black sheep of the Super Mario franchise, it's one of the two. I mean, okay, yeah, Hotel Mario and Mario is missing, but I mean, like, mainline games, it's either Super Mario 2 or Sunshine. I think the world has started to come around to the fun of Super Mario 2, but Super Mario Sunshine still has a lot of detractors for it. And I've said it before in previous episodes. I have to repeat it here. Nintendo fans, and I count myself as a fan of Nintendo, but there is a certain branch of Nintendo fans that tend to get really precious about their franchises, and they don't like it when the franchises try risks. They just want the same thing over and over and over again with minimal iteration. And I think that's what keeps Super Mario Sunshine from being embraced by the Mario fandom. It's a different location. It's not the Mushroom Kingdom. You're wearing the water pack, and that's integral to gameplay. That's how you levitate. That's how you move forward and backward if you want to like float and clear large gaps. There's the graffiti cleanup.
Yeah.
It's the gameplay is different. The difficulty curve is a little bit harder than a lot of other 3D Marios. As much as I love Super Mario Galaxy, I think they kind of overcorrected and went a little bit too easy. I still love Galaxy though; it's still my favorite 3D Mario. But Super Mario Sunshine, I think, does not get the love that it deserves, and it's such a damn shame that Nintendo has re-released it once, and it was for a limited time on that Super Mario 3D All-Stars that they only sold for like 6 months.
Yeah, limited amount of copies. It's the same thing as we said earlier as well. It's kind of landlocked to a certain platform. It was great at the time because it's a new Mario game. Like you said, maybe it's not looked on as fondly. I'm a huge fan of Sunshine as well. Maybe it's not my favorite, but I'm a big fan of it. But it's funny you mention it. A black sheep of a franchise is another good definition, I think, as well. Because a lot of people, when they talk about Final Fantasy, they say that 8 is the one that's kind of the black sheep in the franchise. It's the one after 7, but it's the one before 9, and it's kind of the best part and the worst part of both potentially. But yeah, it's a cool one because I've been playing that myself probably in the last 6 months or so. I'm not too far into it, but I actually like the fact that he's got a different kind of suit that's always with you. And then I've heard you talk about it on the podcast before about certain challenge rooms where they take abilities away from you. And now it's a purely platforming kind of challenge. So I think it opens an interesting door for them.
Yeah, it really showed a Nintendo that I don't want to say they don't exist anymore, but they don't take risks as often as they used to.
Yeah.
And the GameCube era was Nintendo just throwing everything against the wall and seeing what stuck. And I admire that Nintendo, and I want to support that Nintendo more than I want to support play it safe, play the hits Nintendo.
Yeah.
All right. Next generation, the 7th generation, the Xbox 360, the PlayStation 3, and the Wii. What do you have?
Yes, I went for a racing game on Xbox 360, and there was one of 4 that I was going to choose, and the one I've chosen is Sonic and All-Star Racing Transformed. It's a pretty popular, fairly well-known game, probably one of the more well-known ones that's on my list at least. However, it's the classic example of an easy-to-learn, difficult-to-master game. It's effectively Mario Kart, but with the Sonic characters. But because it's Sega, and, go back to the hardcore kind of difficulties of, Outrun, it has that in the game. So when you first pick it up and play, there's some characters you're familiar with, there's some characters you're not, depending on what era, people come from with Sega franchise. They're using the greatest hits of all the tracks and the music and stuff, so that's super cool. But then it lulls you into a false sense of security because you think it's a fairly easy racing game, sorry. And then at some point, it says, try and get the platinum level, racing times around the track. And they are so hard, if anybody's played the old kind of Outrun games, to get even 4 destinations on the original Outruns. That's how it feels in this game, that you will try and overcome that challenge 50 attempts and you still kind of won't get there. But the other reason I like it is because I'm a big fan of Diddy Kong Racing. And for me, that set a high watermark for how I judge karting games. And for me, Sonic Racing Transformed is the closest it's got to that. You have cars, you have boats, you have planes, but it dynamically switches between them during the flow of the race. And also the tracks update in real time as well. So sometimes a cliff will fall over and then now there's a new route through that cliff, or this particular segment of the track gets flooded. So now the next time you go past that track, now you're in the boat rather than on wheels. It's super cool.
That is a cool idea.
Yeah, it's nice. It's always on sale as well. Is another good benefit.
That's something that Mario Kart could probably use, is that kind of, like you said, that dynamic real-time environment changing, especially with Mario Kart World being open world now.
Yeah, exactly. And even if it was, you've always got the power-ups, but even if it was the power-ups actually made a difference to the environment itself, because one of the other games that I was considering is Split Second, and Split Second is a racing game where the track also dynamically updates. So maybe in the 360 era, 7th gen, there was something in the water about dynamism during races, which was pretty interesting. But as I say, on Steam at least, it's still available now. It still looks and plays great. And it's always on sale for, £5, which is probably, less than $10 or something like that.
Yeah, for a deal like that, I mean, a $10 game and a racing game is something you can get so much replayability out of. So.
Yeah, and the multiplayer side of it as well. I was just talking about the difficulty of the AI, but yeah, multiplayer. But what's yours? Is it 360 as well?
No, it is. Actually, it might have come out on the 360, but I'm familiar with it from the PlayStation 3. And it is a game called Child of Eden.
Oh, I love Child of Eden.
Oh, someone else who knows it. Yes.
Mizuguchi. I absolutely love it.
There might be a few listeners who are going, how come he didn't mention Rez on the PlayStation 2? Well, this is why. Because I thought that mentioning Rez would probably be a little bit cliche for me. So I'm mentioning its spiritual sequel instead.
Yeah, fantastic.
Everything that Rez was, Child of Eden just steps it up a little bit more. Rather than doing the wireframe visuals of Rez, which are gorgeous. Don't get me wrong. I love the visuals of Rez. Child of Eden fleshes it out into a much richer, much fuller atmosphere. Whole new soundtrack that's absolutely gorgeous. The rail shooting gameplay of Rez is just refined a little bit more and is absolutely easy to pick up. A lot like Sonic Racing. Very easy to pick up. Very challenging to master. I still haven't beaten the game.
Wow.
But it is such a gorgeous game. Just a game. I almost wish that there was like a free roam mode in the game, because sometimes I just get mesmerized by the visuals and I forget, oh yeah, I'm playing a game. I have objectives.
Yeah. It's super cool. In fact, I haven't heard those words, Child of Eden, in a long time. But when you mention it, Mizuguchi, because I'm a big fan of Tetris Effect as well. He's one of those few people, if you just follow his career, you play Tetris Effect and I can see Rez in Tetris Effect. You go back to Rez and, like you said with the music, hardcore challenge, super cool, gets you into the kind of the action. And he has a name for it. It's like synesthesia or something. And it's basically the idea that it's trying to hit all of your emotions and all of your senses kind of at once. It's super cool.
Yeah. And the difficulty of it is such that when you make a mistake or when you die or when you fail an objective, it's all on you. He has the way that he's crafted Rez and Child of Eden and Tetris Effect, which is my preferred way to play Tetris.
Yeah.
If you make a mistake, it's because you didn't do the right thing. It's not an unfair game design issue. Absolutely wonderful game. It's one of the reasons why I still have my PS3. Like, yeah. I keep it for about like 4 or 5 games, and that is one of them.
Yeah, it's super cool. It's a nice one as well, because you mentioned rail shooter. For anybody that likes, Lilac Wars, Star Fox, it's in that kind of realm as well. As it doesn't look like Star Fox, but it's a rail shooter in the same realm. You can learn the patterns, and there is ways to optimize your strategy and the timing of kind of firing the shots. Super cool.
All right, next generation, the 8th generation, PS4, Xbox One, the Wii U, and the original Switch. What do you have?
So I've gone for a game it's a multi-platform game, but I played it on PS4. It's an open world game, or small hub open world. It's Sniper Elite 4. A couple of the games that I've chosen on my list have been, British games. This just so happens to be one of them. This is done by a studio that's called Rebellion, who right now own the Judge Dredd license and all of the 2000 AD comics in general. But this is one of their franchises, Sniper Elite, which is, you're a World War sniper, and I would just describe it as World War Hitman. If you play the Hitman franchise, it's the same thing, but instead of being an assassin, you're just a guy with a big sniper rifle. You go around these mini open worlds. There are enemies placed all around encampments, bomb bases, real locations kind of in the world. It's World War era, so they go to different places in France, Germany, and so on. It's all historical warfare. So all of the weapons are not pristine kind of shooters like, say, in a Call of Duty. They all have their benefits and kind of downsides. So you've got a really cool, powerful weapon, but it takes a few seconds to reload because it's bolt action and stuff. But then that feeds into the loadouts, the upgrades, different bits and pieces that you can do to optimize and change your playstyle. And you're effectively shooting targets from the other side of the map, and they really double down on that feeling of making a shot from 1 mile away, and the gratuitous violence of that as well. So when you land a shot on a target, it goes into an X-ray mode, very similar to something like Mortal Kombat, and it shows the bullet physically penetrating through their mesh, through their spleen, through their liver, and also give you points, based on how accurate you were, or if you're looking for certain targets. And it's got loads of different challenges on top of that. You can also shoot environmental hazards. So instead of shooting the targets, you can shoot the chandelier above their head, and then the chandelier drops on them. So there's that kind of stuff. And it's got a 2-player campaign mode that you can play the entire game from start to finish with another person. And I think this is probably one of the last eras where that was a real, high bar consideration for things like Gears of War and stuff like that. But yeah, super cool. Sniper Elite 4, very particular for that one. It's got 6 entries in the franchise right now. I don't think it's been bettered than 4.
You might have just sold me on that one too. That sounds really fascinating. Like, I love the idea of the Hitman games. I've never been really great at them, but the idea of taking that and putting it in a World War era, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and it's got the distance kind of element, because obviously in Hitman, you're on foot, you're going into a Paris street show, you have to be very close to the target, you have to poison them at really close range, you have to talk to them. The Sniper Elite is the opposite to that. You're trying to be as far away from your target as possible, but do a super cool shot from the other side of the map because of the time and place, factoring in the wind, the drop off of the bullets. But it also can be as accessible or as hardcore as you want it to be as well. You can have a fun kind of arcade experience, or you can have the full simulation of the ballistics and gravity and things like that as well. It's great.
I'm gonna have to look that up. I'm very interested in this now.
That sounds like an expensive weekend for you then.
As if I need more.
Yeah, exactly. So what was yours?
Mine is it is also a British game. It is called The Infectious Madness of Dr. Decker.
Oh, I've heard of that.
It is a full motion video game. It came as a recommendation from a former guest and a friend of mine, Licia Finley. Hey, Licia. So throw away all of the stigma of FMV games from the 90s. This actually uses full motion video in a much more intelligent way and actually gives you more of a gameplay experience. With The Infectious Madness of Dr. Decker, you play as a psychiatrist who inherits the practice and the patience of a psychiatrist, the titular Dr. Decker, who was murdered by one of his patients. And your goal in the game is to figure out which one of the patients is the murderer. But at the same time, you're counseling these patients and you're finding out this, each one of them has their own story, and it randomizes every time. It's not like you play once. It's not like Night Trap, for instance, where there is one solution to the game and that's it. Every time you play, there are different paths that you can take and different responses that you can get. You can pick some of the pre-generated questions. You can generate your own questions. You can find new video and new clues and new stories from each one of your patients, and your patients are unique.
Nice.
There's one guy who insists that he's living in a time loop. There's another guy who insists that he lives 25 hours a day instead of 24, and that 25th hour, the rest of the world is frozen and he has the ability to do things and go places and do whatever he wants. He steals art. He takes pictures of the neighbor naked. There's a patient who is incredibly flirtatious and may also be communicating with an undersea monster and leading people to their deaths. Like I said, each patient has their own little quirk, and the more you get into it, the more horrifying it gets. And it really hints at a connection to Lovecraftian horrors and the Cthulhu mythos. And it's very well acted. It's very well scripted. It's a little unnerving, but it's not, there's never a jump scare. There's never like a zombie that pops out and goes, blah. It's just learning about these people and learning how deeply mad they are and how much it might drive you nuts, both as the character and as the player. And
Nice.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's not expensive. It's like $20, I think.
Nice. Well, it sounds like on my side, that's one for my kind of wish list as well. So yeah, I'm a big fan of British games in general. And just as you were chatting about it, I was just about to say, does it have a Lovecraftian kind of vibe? And I was just about to mention, is it, it sounds Doctor Who-ish or Dredge-ish, where it feels like there's a world that's kind of familiar, but the inhabitants of it or the things that you encounter is enough to kind of start making you question, what's the motivations of this person, or what is the background of that person that's led them to get to this point? And then that's when you pick up the pads just at that stage. Yeah, that's super cool. I've not played many FMV games in general. I know there's some of the recent ones it's Steam, is it Telling Lies, that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
the ones where you're kind of piecing the puzzles together. But yeah, it's a genre that's a little bit of a blind spot for me. So now that you mention it, I'll definitely add that to my wish list.
It was a blind spot for me too until I had Lacia on, and because she's a huge FMV game fan, and she just had a ton of recommendations for it, and Dr. Decker was the first one that she recommended, and it paid off. Absolutely phenomenal game. There's another one that she recommended, which I haven't started it yet, called Immortality.
Yeah.
But the people who make Dr. Decker, it's a studio, I believe it's called Diavecchi. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it, but she said all of their games are just worth your time. So
nice. That's super cool. Nice.
And that brings us to the most recent generation, the PS5, I can never remember the Xbox Series console.
whichever one's not the one, but not the original one.
Right. And now the Switch 2. Do you have a pick for this one?
Yeah, so for this one, it's one I mentioned quite a lot to people. It's on the Nintendo Switch, and I think it's also on Game Pass, but I played it on the Switch. It's a game called The Tourist, and it's Tourist with a Y because there's also a TV show called The Tourist as well, just in case it comes up. And basically, it's a cozy exploration game around holiday destinations. And you play as a little guy who's on his holidays, and he's almost like a voxel kind of character. So it's almost like a 2D pixelated world, but it's 3D, blockouts, Minecraft-ish kind of style.
Mm-hmm.
And all you do is you go around these holiday destinations and do small tasks for people. That's pretty much it. It's really, really easy to play. It's really, really simple. It's almost like a 2-button control scheme. It's one of the few Switch games that's 60 FPS, so it's buttery smooth in terms of its motion. And also, because it's in a voxel kind of style, the camera's kind of third person, but when you tilt it upwards, it goes into a top-down viewpoint. And when you tilt it downwards, it transitions into first person. And it's one of the only games I've ever played that I've seen that entire transition of effectively the entire gamut of kind of camera systems in the game, from top down to first person. But generally speaking, it's a very low stakes kind of cozy game that has some interesting mechanical kind of variety, despite the fact that you only have a 1-button control scheme. And when I'm talking about tasks for people, it might be somebody has lost their fruit and you have to go around the island, going to find 5 watermelons and bring it back to them. And that's a task. And then another task will be somebody has lost their sunglasses, and then you have to climb to the top of a tower to get their sunglasses back, and so on. There's a little bit more to it than that, but I don't know why, whether it was publicity, marketing, that kind of side of things, it kind of slipped under the radar. And even when it came out in Game Pass, I don't think it had any kind of fanfare kind of whatsoever, but it's a super cool game. It's from a German studio the game's called The Tourist.
Interesting. I love a cozy game. Every now and then you need to not save the world. You just want to, do something. You want to play a game, but you just want to chill.
Yeah, that's it. It reminds me of Little Gator Game and A Short Hike. They're the more popular ones that are on Steam at the moment. It's in that kind of vein, but yeah, it's really nice. It's super cool.
I'll have to
Nice.
take a look at that too. My pick for this generation is a game that was literally rated not very well by its reviews, but I think it was kind of unfairly maligned. And that was the reboot of Saints Row. I am a huge Saints Row fan. So this might be a little bit biased, and I'm not going to claim that the Saints Row reboot is anywhere of the quality of 2, 3, or 4. It's not. But it's not bad, is the thing. It's still, it's perfectly functional. For all the complaints that people had about, it's glitchy and it crashes all the time, never happened to me. And I played it on the PS5. Never happened once. It's a Saints Row game. It's got that silly juvenile sense of humor that Saints Row is known for. It doesn't quite go to the lengths that Saints Row 3 did with, purple dildo bats and stuff.
Yeah.
And the dubstep cannon, but it's still kind of grounded in reality, but a Saints Row reality. But it's still got the Saints Row gameplay to it. It still has a variety of missions. It still has a sense of humor, and it still brings me the thing that no GTA game has given me in the past 20 years, which is a sense of fun while being a crime simulator. Like, if I want a serious crime story, I will go watch a Michael Mann movie, or a Scorsese movie. But if I'm playing a game where I am carjacking someone as they're driving through the neighborhood, or I have to use a military helicopter to blow up a bunch of armored cars all around town, I want to have fun doing it. I don't want it to be some dour, depressing story. And Saints Row does that, and I liked it. Sue me.
No, I'm the same. I'm right there with you. I was working on an open world game briefly when Saints Row came out, the revision of it. And I picked up the game for exactly that reason. I wanted to see what they changed, what was new, what was cool. And when the reviews were saying it was kind of a 6 out of 10 game and things like that, it is absolutely not a 6 out of 10 game. No. It's way better than that. Or also people's definition of what a 6 out of 10 game has changed drastically. Because for me, it was a good, solid third-person shooter, and it has the fun stuff that you mentioned. It has the cool soundtracks. One of my favorite things that they added is where you can get on top of the car and lie on your back on the top of the car, shooting in a 360. There is no other open world game I've played, not even Just Cause, that I've seen that's done that. It's super cool for, the co-op kind of aspect and the craziness that you can have on top of vehicles. Even GTA hasn't done that yet, being able to physically stand on top of a car or lie on top of a car without getting thrown off it, just because it's more fun that way.
Mm-hmm. And I thought the setting was different. I know that on a GTA map, usually, especially really far in the outliers, there's the desert area, but the desert was important to this Saints Row reboot. It was its own, it was completely different from the settings of the previous games. It made it unique. It made it stand out. And like you said, yeah, it got a bunch of 6 of 10 reviews. It was not a 6 of 10 game. Was it a 10 of 10 game? No. Do I need it to be a 10 of 10 game? Also, no.
Exactly.
It was not everything needs to be a masterpiece. Sometimes I want a 5-star Wagyu steak, and sometimes I want Burger King. Saints Row reboot was Burger King, and I'm fine with that. It scratched the itch that I was looking for.
Yeah, it's good. And the other cool thing is because I think a lot of people overlooked it, or maybe it didn't sell as well as maybe it could have. It also means it's much more affordable now. And that's the other difference as well, is people who are paying, $60-$80 for a game and expecting a masterpiece. It's a different question when you can get that for, a third of the price, and you can rediscover it after the fact in something like a humble bundle as well. And I think it will get a second lease of life at some point, that game.
I think I picked mine up, and I got a physical media, the Steelbook version of it. I think I got it for like $20.
Yeah. It's criminal. Yeah.
And I was on the fence about it too. I was like, I heard the reviews, and then I saw $20 Steelbook version, all of the DLC. Okay, well, I'd be stupid not, for $20. It's if it doesn't pay off, fine. It was $20, but if it works, hey, cool, I got an insane deal, and it did. So.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of our episode. This is the part where we say like, share, subscribe. Please rate us on the platform of your choosing. If you would like to follow us, we are on Blue Sky at First Gen Gamers Pod. We're also on Instagram at First Gen Gamers Pod. Email firstgengamerspod@gmail.com. And if you want to follow me, Streets of Jed on Blue Sky. And now, Jamie, if you have anything you would like to plug.
Yeah, so I'm the game designer day to day, so I normally post on Blue Sky as well. I'm at Smith Stocks, so SMITHSTOCK. And yeah, basically I'm talking about game design and what games I'm playing kind of at the moment on there. I tend to browse more than post, but yeah, if anybody ever needs to get in touch, that's the place to be.
All right. Thank you so much for being on. It was an absolute blast to talk with you about both your career and just to talk about some overlooked games that need a little more attention.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, likewise, it's an expensive weekend for us both.
As if I didn't buy a game 2 days ago.
Exactly.
All right. Once again, thank you for appearing on the show. It was great fun. And until next time, everybody.